Welcome back to From Pain to Gain. Again, my brother. Hey, what's
Hola.
up, Jason? How you doing, bro?
Doing well, doing well. Looking forward to talking about peacemaking.
Oh man, I was supposed to switch my shirt, so it was an illusion of a new day. Dang it. The jig is up.
We'll do two episodes at once.
Yeah. All right. Seventh Beatitude. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. So, man, this is a beautiful one. Uh,
Yeah, in the message it says, "Blessed when you show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family."
yeah. There's numerous things that come up, getting a lot of goosebumps, but the there's this one rap lyric. I think the artist name is Hovey, and one of the lyrics goes, "You can't stunt on me because I want you to get your shine." And basically ends with, "I want you to get success over mine," something like that.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful connection to how Jesus would like us to, be together.
Yeah, I mean, I can think about just times in my life when I was younger when there were people I followed that drove division instead of encouraging unity and reconciliation, they encourage division and fighting. And then I've had people that I followed that were the opposite, right? And so, um, I was talking to someone about just the year 2020, the pandemic year, and one of the regrets that he had was just how divided we were as a country, the
Hmm.
division. And so I think that's a big problem we have. We're very polarized and calcified in our society. But we also need to think about where are the divisions coming from? Who's creating the divisions? And also what systematic, what systems, structures, incentives are also incentivizing people to create division for profit or influence or whatever it might be to win an election. But yeah, so peacemaking or division making, I mean, those are the two sides of the spectrum. And we're all, you know, division makers in some way or have been. And that's something we got to sort out. And what I love in the message version is it says, you know, that's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. When the division comes, when the peacemaking opportunities arise, that's when we get to see who we really are. And I
Hmm.
think for me, just in my own journey over the last 13, 14 months, like specifically going on this journey as a Republican in the Republican Party, trying to help divert it in a different direction than it has inevitably gone. There's stuff in me I've got to work out, my own issues, my own stuff. And these opportunities for peacemaking and division are are those opportunities to reveal the parts of me that I do need to purge and work out and sanctify and get God to work out. And so as we get closer to election, a lot of that stuff, I should be becoming more of a peacemaker the closer I get to the election and less of a rebel rouser, violent, uh,
Jerk face.
conflict foster. What?
Jerk face.
Yes, I should be coming. And so that if I'm doing the if I'm letting God do his work in me, I should be becoming more of a peacemaker over the next several weeks and months and less of a division maker. So
Yes. The Hebrew word for peace is shalom, means much more than just absence from strife. It means completeness or wholeness. Apart from Christ, it's impossible to live at peace with others because he is our shalom. The term also includes people who make peace between individuals
mhm,
or communities. It
yeah,
includes even those who are worthily endeavor to make peace, though they may fail to succeed in their own lifetime, like fail to succeed fully. Uh,
yeah.
as we alluded to with MLK, he started the uh, the movement, but the results we didn't see until 10, 20 years later, or even
Yeah.
later than that.
Yeah, this is yeah, go were you gonna say something else?
Yeah, I was gonna just say one thing that connects this kind of indirectly. Um, we used to have a lack of wholeness But in the Old Testament, there would only be one high priest permitted to go into to pass the veil in the temple every year to enter God's presence. But when Jesus was sacrificed, that veil was torn, and so we have access to that peace at any time now, if we decide, and we could distribute that peace fully to
Mhm.
others also.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's we could be that can be a resource we distribute.
Hmm.
I So here's a kind of little excerpt from the Bible Project on the peacemaking. So it's a conversation between Tim and John. Tim says the last three announcements are about the difficult path ahead for those who choose to follow Jesus and enter the kingdom of God. And here they are. John says, how good is life for the peacemakers because they will be called children of God. Tim says, when God's kingdom arrives in full one day, it will bring peace between all people. And so anyone entering God's kingdom now is called to work as a peacemaker. That means entering into conflicts and working creatively to open up a just and generous path forward for others. And that may sound nice, and it can be dangerous, as Jesus goes on to say. John says, how good is life for those who have been persecuted on account of doing what is right, because theirs is the kingdom of the skies, which is how they describe kingdom of God. Tim says very often wading into conflicts and pursuing peace and reconciliation will mean pushing against the status quo, and that will likely result in resistance, getting fired at from all sides. But if this peacemaking reflects the loving way of Jesus and has done it for his reputation, it is worth it. John says, how good is life for you when people insult you and persecute you and spread evil lies against you on account of me? Celebrate and shout for joy because your reward is great in the skies. For this is how they persecuted the prophets before you. So Tim says, be prepared to be misunderstood. Jesus says, you could be made fun of, treated unfairly, and or labeled. And Jesus says that not only is it worth it, it's actually cause for celebration, John says. Tim says, right. Jesus says, look to Israel's past prophets as an example. When you are misunderstood for peacekeeping, you stand in a long line of God's people who spoke up for righteousness, justice, and mercy. It is both the cost and the reward for bearing witness to God's kingdom. It's interesting because he made the comment about like getting fired from all sides, and
Hmm.
and just that being misunderstood. And there's a quote, I can't remember the guy's name, but or I think it was from Augustus, and just his prayer was like, God, help me let go of my desire for vindication, right? To be vindicated and in light of being um, completely misrepresented and lied about. And that's just one of the one of the 10 virtues of which I'm striving for is, okay, God, let me be someone who can be completely misrepresented by others and not feel this need that I have to correct them, that I can let it go. And so that's an interesting dynamic to think about. Part of the peacemaking
Yeah,
is letting things go too.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a practical way to look at this too. There was a time where my wife and I, before we got married, we had a lot of different habits. And like she was a lot more, let's say, um, self-sustaining. She had
Independent.
she's a doctor, and she um, doesn't really depend or even need to, or when it even comes to venting, she kind of just figures stuff out on her own. She doesn't like let out all this frustration upon me, to just let it out. So there's little habits like that, that like both of us could. I'm sure I had many flaws, and she's communicated that too. We had to work through those things, and in the
Yeah.
midst of those things, it takes time, which means there's frustration, especially in America, right? You want everything
Yeah.
now.
Yep. Yep. We want it immediately without all the hard work required to get there.
Yeah, but the practical way to think about it is loving on somebody, creating a peaceful environment, and praying to God about those frustrations. It's a very practical way to get that short-term kind of stopgap of like, loving on this person, creating an environment of peace, showing how much I love them,
Hmm.
is very gratifying.
Yeah.
And so that frustration is mitigated to a drastic level.
Yeah.
It kind of draws it back to Jesus, right? He gave so much,
Yeah.
and it was painful,
Hmm.
but he knew the short term and long term meaning of that he'll be hanging out with us. So it's a beautiful way to think about peacemaking. That hey, if you're in the midst of frustration, figure out how to enhance the peacemaking, even though it may seem unnatural. Um, it's just not an American thing. Whenever you get hurt, when you don't have peace in your life, you want to make sure the other person doesn't have peace
Yeah.
for the most
Yeah.
part.
Well, and it's really interesting because you and I were sharing this I shared this talk with Joanne what was her last name? Freeman. And she wrote a book just about the how the American Civil War unfolded. And she tells this story about this one guy in the North who wrote this letter to someone in the South, like a really generous and kind of extended hand, like, hey, I understand where you're, like I can appreciate that. Like just really putting himself out there and taking that risk to make peace. And the Southerner essentially just shut it down and said, I know who you are, and I know that you're essentially trying to kill us and our kids and destroy our way of life and da da da. They kind of he just went the other way. And so, we can we can be peacemakers, but sometimes that won't be reciprocated, and it's difficult to navigate those situations. So it
Mhm.
does take two people to have peace. It takes multiple people, and sometimes it takes a third party where you have two parties that are fighting and you need the third party to mediate, to stand in the gap, to be in the middle, to translate, and to provide some particularly if it's someone that they both trust, the middle party. And
Mm.
and so we should be doing whatever we can to be a peaceful participant or a peaceful mediator, but ultimately we should be mastering the art of peacemaking, and that should manifest in our lives and in our families and in our communities and in politics. And when we're failing at it, then that's an area we can grow and transform a little bit so that we can be better at it for the next situation.
Yeah. Jason, you're a great person to speak to this, because you aren't um, afraid to stand in the gap of
Yeah.
that person that is, frustrated, that is angry, that is disagreeing with you in all sorts of regards. Um, so for somebody not quite trained, as much as you have to get yourself to that, like like that state of like, I care about you, so I'm gonna stand here. We're gonna work this out. Like, how do you address that? And how do you address people even walking away from you standing there?
Yeah, I mean there's always the opportunity to, I mean, first of all, standing in the gap is standing in the tension, and standing in tension feels is difficult. Because it's uncomfortable, it's like somebody sitting on your head, like you can get good at it, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not like, oh, I look forward to someone sitting on my head. So this tension,
Sounds unsanitary too.
we just feel the tension. And so I think about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. There's so much tension. He's literally sweating blood. That's
Yeah.
how much tension there is. And so it can get to the point where it overwhelms our body and even. Um, and but we can practice that by staying. And so a lot of times we want to just leave the tension, get rid of the tension, eject the
Hmm.
tension. But what we're really doing is just deferring it to the future. We're gonna have to face
Yeah.
that tension later. And there's gonna be more tension when we do it later. And we won't
Yeah.
have an escape clause at that point. So in a sense, you want to take the lesser tension that you deal with now instead of later. Lean into the tension instead of avoid it. But it's hard. It really a lot of cases you need accountability. Like you need community, you need accountability, because sometimes we can't do it on our own, and we need someone else. We need someone else to confess to. We need someone else to encourage us, to tell us, hey, you got to do this thing that you don't want to do. Um, you should do it, but you just can't. So you need someone that can hold you accountable. Um, but also just kind of a more practically speaking, just take a step. Because this is what I do is if I get super emotional and I'm wanting to react, then that's an indication to me that I've bitten off more than I can chew. I'm fighting a dragon that's too big for me, as Jordan Peterson says. So take a step back and just don't respond. Like if I can't respond in a restrained, thoughtful way, then don't respond. Just don't do it. And just admit I am unable to respond. Right?
Hmm.
I may not be able to have this conversation, or I need to end this conversation because I can't handle it. Maybe you can, but I can't.
Yeah,
So
take a breather.
yeah, and that's the way to do it. And then work on whatever it was that triggered you, or work on whatever it is that's bothering you or that makes it so emotional. Work that out and then come back to it and see if you can approach it without that extreme emotion. Because what happens in a conflict is it escalates, and the emotions get higher and higher. But the way to de-escalate is for one of the two parties to not escalate the emotion, to actually de-escalate the emotion.
Mm.
So
Excellent, excellent response. The way I would also draw this out to see how this plays out in your own body, because when you hear this, you're just deferring it. You may not know what that looks like, so you might think naturally, "Oh, my family member is going to yell at me, or I'm going to yell at them." Like it doesn't always play out that way. You could actually, I just found out 5 years ago, you could actually stress your way into an ulcer. So your
yeah.
body could
Yeah, my
literally,
dad I think had that when he was in high school or something like that. Yeah.
wow. So yeah, your
Yeah.
body could literally be harmed by offsetting, dealing
Yeah.
with something. Um, Cancer is caused when a cell's DNA is damaged.
Yeah.
Um, so your DNA could be damaged by harmful substances in the environment. Well, and we naturally think about tobacco or ultraviolet rays, but think about how even just stress could inflame your body and
Yeah.
start to cause all sorts of different radicals. That could be I think so. Maybe a study will find that that could be a big factor into cancer also and other diseases.
Yeah.
Your body is keeping count of everything you're trying to avoid confrontation on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I think if we translate this to the candidates, Harris and Trump, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Trump is a division maker. He is the
Hmm.
divider. He's the divider in chief. There's few people as divisive as he is. Um, and I know he's known as a deal maker, and there have been times he's made deals. Um, but this year he had the opportunity to pass an immigration bill, a bipartisan bill that was negotiated, and he, instead of unifying and peacemaking, he said to not do, he told Republicans not to do the deal.
Even during
And
his own campaign, him being in office, he
yeah,
had opportunity to,
mhm,
but
as
he
well.
used it to essentially hold on to office. So
Yeah, so
manipulate.
he's recognized that using division is a way to win re-election and to
Yeah.
gain power. And so if he can leverage division to do that, he will. On the flip side, Harris has been the opposite. She's reached across the aisle. There's Republicans for Harris. There's Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are both campaigning with her. She last night, Kamala Harris went on Fox News, and there's rumors that she's going to go on Joe Rogan. Like she is literally reaching out to all of these groups and working alongside them. She's going to areas of the country that have been neglected, and so she's seeking to find that middle ground and reach others.
Yeah.
And people may be skeptical about her motivation, but she is peacemaking. She is reaching across the aisle, and Trump is not. He's
Yeah.
dividing and alienating and villainizing.
And Kamala very courageously is reaching across to even what would you use as a word, or have malice in their hearts, reaching to people.
Mhm.
We all know Fox News has malice in their hearts when interviewing Kamala. I just looked at 5 minutes and I could assess that in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, the
The
contempt they
dude,
have for
yeah,
Democrats and for her. Yeah,
he wouldn't even let her answer questions. He would go straight into his agenda of hatred. Um, so that's not only a good sign of this beatitude, being a peacemaker, but courageously being a
hmm
peacemaker. And what is it? without fear, with some degree of authority too, because she could have taken it too far and said, "You
Mhm.
need to shut up right now." But she was like, "I'm going to finish this answer," you know. So any other person could have easily acted out to that, and she was all about, let's make peace here. I'm gonna say the answer. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah. So I think that one's clear cut. We can
Yeah.
call that one, move on.
That'll be the short one. Shortest one. All right, we'll catch y'all in the next episode.
Adios.
This has been Blessed Are the Peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Catch you next one.